Woke people are more likely to be unhappy, anxious, and depressed, new study suggests. Wow, who figured that always looking for something to be offended by is the sign of a miserable little gremlin? I never would have been able to figure this out if it wasn't for these studies. Is ignorance bliss? Yeah, that's actually how the woke tried to deflect this. So I saw Clownfish talking about this too. They were going over some of the comments about it on Twitter. And there were a few wokies that were coping pretty hard about this. Say, well, yeah, I mean, when you live with your head in the sand and you don't acknowledge all these big issues, okay. Or maybe you could look at it this way. Maybe if you don't manufacture things to be outraged about constantly, you could live a happier life. Has nothing to do with ignorance. It's just not inventing problems. It's actually pretty damn simple. Psychological researchers in Finland have created an assessments to help measure an individual's commitment to principles of social justice and made some surprising findings across the Finnish population, including a negative correlation between regressive ideals and levels of happiness. What's surprising about that? Anyone who deals with these cretins is aware of how horrible they are. Where is the surprise in this? I guess the surprise is in the fact that they even released this study to begin with instead of trying to bury it. That's a surprise. Their findings published in the Scandinavian Journal of Psychology suggest other Western nations may see similar patterns among their socially conscious citizens. Brainwashed citizens. Study author Oskari Latinen, a senior researcher at the Invest Research Flagship Center and University of Turku, remarked that the woke discourse has since worked its way into Finnish discourse. Yeah, sucks for Finland that the infection has reached them, huh? The debate was largely data-free and could thus be considered a worthwhile question to study how prevalent these attitudes are, he continued. No reliable and valid instrument existed prior to the study to assess the extent and prevalence of these attitudes in different populations, so I set out to develop one. In their research trajectory, including extensive reading on intersectional feminazism, racism, queer theory, and other relevant academic disciplines that inform a critical social justice. SciPost reports. Oh, man. So is that a way to lump all of this garbage in under one umbrella? Critical social justice? Yeah, first lump it all in and then cancel it all at once. The pilot survey included 851 adult participants, most of whom were associated with the University of Turku. After refining the initial scale, the study was expanded to a more representative national sample of 5,000 participants, distributed via Helsingin Sanomat, Finland's largest newspaper. In the end, their final critical social justice attitude scale identified 7 truisms of woke people. Now, if white people have an average higher level of income than black people, it's because of racism. Obviously, there's nothing else it could be. University reading lists should include fewer white or European authors. Yeah, so far so good. These are sounding pretty woke. Microaggressions should be challenged often and actively. Now, that is a major reason why these people are miserable. No one wants to hang out with them. It's literally Anita Sarkeesian's most famous quote. Everything is racist. Everything is sexist. Everything is homophobic. And you have to point it all out. That's one of the reasons why they're miserable. Who wants to hang out with someone like that? Even if you used to be good friends with that person, how long would you guys put up with this? With having a friend be brainwashed into this cult, and literally every single thing you talk about, they got to point out how it's sexist, racist, or homophobic, or something like that, or transphobic, whatever. Yeah, this is how they lose all their friends, by constantly calling out microaggressions. No, transformer whammons who compete with whammons in sports are not helping whammons' rights. Reverse scored. Oh, okay. That makes it make sense. We don't need to talk more about the color of people's skin. A white person cannot understand how a black person feels equally well as another black person. I think it depends on other circumstances, but in general, this one's not really wrong. A member of a privileged group can adopt features or cultural elements of a less privileged group, reverse scored. Now, when you talk about privilege, though, do they recognize that they are the privileged group? Because one of the things I noticed with the woke is that they never seem to realize that they are the ones with the privilege. They call everyone else privileged while refusing to acknowledge their own. Oh, now this is the best part, actually. The gender divide was probably the most surprising to me, Latinen told the SciPost of Finnish Attitudes. 3 out of 5 whammons view woke ideas positively, but only 1 out of every 7 men. The 1 out of 7 that did view it positively, those were the soy boys. But why are you surprised women do it? Women follow whatever's popular. And right now, the media is making it look like wokeness is popular. So women will go along with it. When it's not popular to be woke anymore, all of a sudden the women's numbers will match men's. So this was especially true of whammons in fields such as social sciences, indoctrination, and humanities. So the fake fields. By contrast, participants who worked in STEM were likely more critical of social justice efforts associated with being woke. Yeah, because they have actual brains. You notice this is a divide between smart people and gullible people. However, the most concerning finding was the relationship between mental health and agreement with the scale. Specifically, researchers found a high prevalence of anxiety and depression in people who believe the statement, if white people have an average higher income than black, it's because of racism. More broadly, they found that those who identified as left-wing are more likely to report lower mental well-being. Well, yes, because they're always manufacturing problems for themselves. They think everything is racist, everything is sexist, that whole spiel. Could you imagine how horrible it must be actually believing that? Living in a world where you legitimately believe everyone and everything is racist, sexist, homophobic? So Latinen warned against extrapolating their findings to international audiences just yet, particularly across Western nations. The studies were quite robust with a sample size above 5,000 and good psychometric properties. However, the scale would need to be validated in North American samples in order to know these attitudes manifest there. I encourage colleagues in the U.S. to study the prevalence of these attitudes in the country where they originate from. Yeah. Hey, you guys are ground zero for this woke garbage. Why don't you look into this? As someone who's in the U.S., I'll tell you now, it's no different. It's mostly white Karens that believe this shit. Everyone who does is generally miserable. Have any of you ever met a single happy SJW? Have you ever met a wokey that was happy? When it was for something other than them ruining someone else's life and canceling them. They find temporary happiness ruining other people's lives. But that's, if anything, they're just vindictive.